Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we're looking at the SE4 Servant Droid, better known as the SE4 Series Protocol Droid. This was a droid line construction by Industrial Automation, the same corporation that also made the 3PO droids, with the help of planning of social occasions and parties. So, not just a standard servant droid, but something meant more for like your elitists or so on and so forth for trying to um, help cater people and everything else. Uh, you know, quite often, and I'll take in today's day and age as far as all that goes. We're looking for something to kind of take the place or hit some of the mundane things that we don't typically want to do. So here we are. All right, characteristics: the SE4 stood about 1.6 meters tall and was built according to the basic humanoid frame. On the lining of the left index finger, the SE4 was fitted with a taste bud, and a sensor was more sensitive than that of a human. A side of being good, or aside of being good cooks, the SE4 droids were equipped with very limited transistor circuits containing about 100 languages. So it gives you a pretty good base of for trying to hobnob with all the other elitists, right? Okay, so history of the SE4 was an old model, but it could be upgraded to the newest dishes and banquet customs, so the SE4 line would never really become outdated. The SE4 series had a market value of roughly about 2,600 credits, brand new, and about 1,300 credits used. The SE4 server droid, named RO2-E, was employed by Derek in the Dimyu Monastery on Tanui. As a behind the scenes taste bud that was placed on the left finger, the essential guide to droids and arms and equipment guide states that it's inside the right finger. So, kind of going from there as there's differences. Now, these are all from West End Games originally. So, we have to kind of keep that in mind and looking at things here. It does look like there is some possible newer. The Rebel Alliance sourcebook, that's West End Games. Galaxy Guide, West End Games. Dark Force Rising, that's all West End Games. Actually, it doesn't look like anybody had touched. Oh, here. Standoffs. This is from Wizards of the Coast. So I was right. Somebody did pick it up later on, which does make sense as you pick up stuff and you're trying to bring, when West End Games had uh, or Wizards of the Coast had picked it up from West End Games because West End Games had lost the license and that. They were trying anything and everything to try and get everyone to stop playing the D6 and go to the D20. Um, the D20 wasn't bad, but there were issues with it. Uh, they tried their best, but unfortunately, there were shortfalls. And the nice thing is when they had done Knights of the Old Republic, they took the D20 system because that was from BioWare, who was a advent player of like D&D and all that, and they made some D&D games, but they took that idea and fixed the Star Wars. So they actually kind of fixed the system, and they added in an extra category for using Force. So uh, it kind of really helped balance everything out them a little bit better than what Weston, or keep wanting to say Weston Games, better than what Wizards of the Coast had done originally. So uh, we go from there. Okay, so now let's bring this into the old West End Games D6 stats here. So we have the Industrial Automation SE4 Servant Droid. Has a dexterity of 2, so that's on par with our Galactic Standard. Remember, a 2D in the old West End Games was your average stat for pretty much anything. We have a knowledge of 2D, so it has a basic humanoid kind of reasoning with everything. Culinary arts is a 4D, so it is fairly well established with that. We have cultures at a 3D, home economics at 4D, and languages at 3D. So, for being a butler or whatever to kind of clean things up and everything else, it can do really well. Mechanical, being a 2D, Communications is a 3D. Repulsor lift operation is a 3D. So it can drive a little bit better than your standard humanoid. Has a perception of 2D. Bargaining is 3D. Strength is 2D. Lifting is, again, 3D. Technical being a 2D, so first aid being a 3D, so it can kind of try and help if you get a burn or a cut or whatever else, help try and heal you up. The equipment has a humanoid body, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, yeah, vocabulary speech system, has photoreceptors and auditory sensors, has a move of 7. So keep in mind our standard humanoid can move about 10. So our servant droid's going to be a little bit slower, very much what we see with like 3PO from the movies. Along that same lines, when you look at the body here in the picture, it is very much along the same lines there. So it does make sense. Size is 1.6 meters, so that is again our standard average, trying to have it blend in, seem like it's part of the group. Cost is 2,600 brand new, 1,300 used, just like what was in the write up from Wikipedia. Now, the source for this we have Cinnabar's Fantastic Technology, Droids. We have Dark Force Rising sourcebook, page 105. We have Rebel Alliance sourcebook, page 120, 121. Dark Strider Campaign Box Set, page 84. The Thrawn Trilogy sourcebook, page 199. And last but not least, Arms and Equipment Guide is page 54. So we've brought this in a number of times, and the possibility of playing a droid like this as a main character is always something that's out there. And it is one of those things that is actually discussed in the original West End Games books, playing a droid as a character. Because when you really look at how George Lucas had written R2 and 3PO, and later on when we get Rogue One and we get K2SO, again, they're not just droids, they're more or less sentient beings of their own right. They take selfless acts to sacrifice themselves at times, or George Lucas had written 3PO and R2 to be kind of the comic relief in the show. He didn't want to have just straight up jokes and puns, but he made them as the comic relief, and it works. I think a lot of the things that we see from some of the older series, and George Lucas had done a really good job in the original trilogy, is this is, yes, a show or a movie for kids. But when you have a good story, it doesn't have to be just for kids. It could be for anyone. And likewise, I think of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. There again, at the time, that was written for kids. But it resonates for us as adults, and it becomes a timeless classic because anyone can sit down and then they can envision themselves going for the adventure. And that is the beautiful thing of how these, to say it this way, older shows were written. They were the Lord of the Rings was originally a book series. This was written as a movie, and I know he came out with the book afterwards. And it's just, when you get something good, even though it's aimed more for kids, but we expect that the kids have a good reasoning skill, it can resonate with pretty much everyone, and it becomes a good hit. And we're a testament to it today, because here we are, we're still looking at Star Wars, Star Trek being the same way, the Lord of the Rings and all that stuff. So many years later, it still captivates us as a society, and here we're still talking about it. So with that, thank you so very much for stopping by today. It's always wonderful having you stop by. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in the next video.